Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. As you guys can see by the title and the thumbnail of this video, we're at the end of a quarter. We are literally at quarter 3. How is quarter 3 over? How is this year going by so fast? I have no idea. But with that being said, we are doing quarter 3, the good, the bad, and the disappointing. So let's start with the good. As always, we're gonna start with the good. We have 2 books for the good. I'm very excited. So we had 2 books in the good category, and that was The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore and Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice by Cicatelli-Kuc. But let's talk about the Pumpkin Spice. Let's talk about Strawberry Patch Pancake House. And let's just very quickly state that this was one of the cutest single dad romances that I think I've ever read. This was literally the sweetest thing ever. I loved that Archer was like this super big chef and has been renowned and is like a Michelin star, like super great chef. And then he gets to this small town and everyone just wants pancakes and he cannot succeed at just a pancake. And so this story follows Archer, Iris, and Olive. Archer is our single dad, Iris is a nanny, and Olive is our little baby girl. And we love Olive, but Olive does not love her dad. Olive doesn't really know him. She's not too thrilled to be stuck in this situation, so Iris comes along to try to help out Archer around the house and try to see how they can get this little girl to just be more open to enjoying her dad's company. And we end up watching Iris fall in love with Olive, and it was the best the best group to follow in this story was watching Archer learn to be a dad, watching Iris learn to love children, and watching Olive learn to trust. And that was just such a beautiful story. That was such a good one. I'm consistently thinking about that story. I love it so much. And then we had Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice by Cicatelli-Kuc. You guys, a scholastic book made its way onto my good in this quarter. Like, that's insane. This book was so good. This follows Lucy and this follows Jack. And Lucy and her mom own this small coffee shop called Cup of Joe. And Jack and his family are from out of town and they move in. And we find out that his family owns a corporate coffee shop that just so happens to move in right across the street from Cup of Joe. So this entire book we follow Lucy and Jack having animosity, but not really having animosity. It's more or less bickering because Lucy is convinced that Jack and his family moved in to sabotage Cup of Joe, and Jack is trying to convince Lucy the entire book that Java Junction did not know that they were going to be moving in right across the street from a small business. So this book was really cute, and another thing that I loved about it is that obviously it was a scholastic book, so there was no spice, no smut to kind of push the story along in those small, like, laggy moments that we get in some romances where, you know, you can always tell whenever someone's had a hard time coming up with what's next because they just throw in a spice scene. But this one didn't have that. It was just a beautifully written story, and I loved Lucy, I loved Jack, and I loved the Gilmore Girls feeling of this book, if that makes sense. Like the small town of Briar Glen really feels like Stars Hollow. Like it really just feels like Gilmore Girls, and that made this book feel so good, so cozy. It really put me in the fall spirit. But there is a little fall festival that goes on in this book that is kind of the turning point for Lucy and Jack, and I thought that it was so beautifully done. I really loved this book so much. Now we're going to talk about the bad. I'm really disappointed about it because I really wanted to like it and I didn't. And that was Under the Wide and Starry Sky by Nancy Horan. Do I even have that up here anymore? I do. And I'm gonna need it because I don't really remember what's in this book. So basically, Under the Wide and Starry Sky by Nancy Horan was a DNF for me. I really didn't enjoy it. But it follows a woman who I believe she's in her late 30s, mid 30s, but she is fleeing her husband with their children. She's fleeing him and she gets on a boat and the governess comes along with them and they meet a young lawyer on the way in, and Fanny doesn't really like him. And that's kind of where I DNF'd. So this is where we're gonna have to look at the book because I could not get through it. And basically, Fanny is an artist and she was fleeing her husband because that was just not the way that he was treating her as someone who had abilities to do things. So she was fleeing with her children, and they end up in a little artist colony in France, and she meets Louis, who ends up being a lawyer who she meets and she doesn't really like, but she ends up being charmed by him. So we end up following their relationship for a little bit and watching Louis become an author instead of a lawyer. It was just kind of all over the place, and I don't know if that's just because my brain wasn't into the story or if it was just because I didn't like the way that the author wrote, but I was lost the entire book. I don't think there was one moment where I was like, oh, I know exactly what's going on. I really don't think there was one moment. And then we're talking about the disappointing. Our disappointing book was Liberty by Gita Trelease. I'm sure you guys remember me talking about this book, and all of the books that I have spoken about are in previous videos. So if you guys want to dive farther into those books, I would recommend going over and watching those. But Liberty by Gita Trelease was just not what I had anticipated. And what I mean by that is I was so excited for the just Mod Podge of what this book's genre was. There was historical fiction, there was fantasy, there was romance, there was mystery, there was so much in this book. It kept me on my toes the entire time, but I felt like it got repetitive and it just did not feel like the story was moving as quickly as I felt like it should have for as long of a book that it was. I felt like it could have been so much shorter, but it just continued to lag and continued to go on and on and on. And that's, once again, not to say that it was a bad book. I did enjoy the book. I am going to pull it up on here really quick I gave it a 3-star. It wasn't that it was a bad book. and it was a really intriguing read. Like, I was very attached to the story, but it did feel like it just would not end. It just felt like there was so many times where I was like, oh, that would be a good ending, and then there's like 300 pages left and I'm like, but what? So yeah, it was an interesting read, and I really did I wish that it had, how do I want to put this? I'm looking at my notes for this book. Yeah, I guess the best way that I could like put this book was that I enjoyed the world building, I liked the genre of the book, and I liked the writing of the book, but I was bored because it felt like it was never ending. I think that's a pretty good way to describe that. So let's go back through and talk all of the ratings for these books. So for the good, I had the Strawberry Patch Pancake House, and we rated that a 5-star. Obviously that book was fantastic. And then another one in our good, I've been trying to do one book per category, but sometimes I just can't. But the next book that we had was Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice by Cicatelli-Kuc, and we also rated that a 5-star. Under the bad category was Under the Wide and Starry Sky by Nancy Horan, and we DNF'd that one. I hate DNFing books, but it had to be done. And then under our disappointing category, we had Liberty by Gita Trelease, and we ended up rating that a 3-star. So yeah, that's where we are. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you leave a comment downstairs. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.